On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, there's a little movement. There's a little movement on the fourth Star Trek movie front. Right after this.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. I'm Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
So, you bring me onto this podcast today. You tell me there's news. What's going on, Dave?
There's a little bit of news. Deadline, which is by and large a reputable source, is claiming that Paramount is looking at, they're in final talks with Noah Hawley to write and direct the next Star Trek film. It would be produced along with J.J. Abrams and the Bad Robot Banner. There's not a whole lot, other than it looks like Chris Hemsworth won't be back. Which apparently, Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth were both vying for a lot more money, which is why negotiations broke down last time. I would love to have seen what was going on with George Kirk. That just smacks of time travel and or multiverse shenanery, and I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that plot line sounded like a lot of fun, but honestly, to me, it sounded like mostly that they were just going back to the well they had with Chris Hemsworth. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like they were like, hey, we've got this, we've already got a big name actor who is now Thor, who was not Thor at the time, but why don't we bring him back? And it kind of smacked of like a money grab sort of a thing. So I'm not so caught up on that idea that I'm very excited to see whatever they want to do, whatever they want
absolutely.
To do. And the guy doing it, Legion. He made Legion and Fargo, which I've seen Legion, have not seen Fargo. Legion is amazing.
It absolutely is.
And that's going to be a great flavor to bring to Star Trek. I have not seen Fargo, but I've heard nothing but amazing things about Fargo. I think it's been really, really highly praised by everyone that I trust. So really great writer-director. So yeah. I'm down. I'm down to give Star Trek, and we got what's kind of neat about them having this spin-off timeline now. Now that we've got I always thought this spin-off timeline meant we were never getting Picard. We're never getting our prime timeline back. But now that we've got our prime timeline back, I say do whatever the F you want to do in this other timeline. Give it to cool creators and let them make interesting things,
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, Noah Hawley's one of the coolest if you look at Legion. Like,
yes.
How much would you love to see TOS characters in a, TOS framework being used in a what I would call a modern psychedelic storyline? Like,
yeah. No, it fits perfectly with their 60s style. I mean, that's not necessarily the style he'll go for on this, but man, yeah. He does some trippy things on Legion that would work great in a Star Trek context.
Or work great for, like, any kind of alien imagery, like alien perspectives, if you want to, like, have Kirk trapped in some sort of alien prison or something and subjected to mind control or oh my gosh, he could do so much cool stuff. And I wouldn't put it past him. Like, the dude is brilliant, and I love everything I've seen him do on Legion. Like, I adore Legion.
Yep. I was not that excited about a fourth Star Trek movie because I felt like it was just... I just really wanted to get back to the prime timeline, and I wanted to do more stuff. But now that we're getting it, man, I'm actually find myself more excited now that both are going to exist simultaneously, and we'll be able to have these things just like doing their own thing. They're out there in the movie world doing their own thing, and like let Tarantino make a Star Trek movie, let Noah Hawley make a Star Trek movie, like whoever.
This Deadline article does say the studio separately is working on a Star Trek spinoff with Tarantino.
Yeah,
to direct.
I did read that.
Still.
That they're not closing the door to that. So, yeah, make all the Star Trek. I'm totally down. Make really cool Star Trek movies. That's awesome.
I am too. And because CBS and Paramount are officially joining again soon, they could do crossovers You could have people show up in this universe and nary a problem.
Some timeline jumping, and I'm pumped, man. Any other thoughts on this? We said we were just going to drop a short little thing. So
yeah,
any thoughts that you have about this?
I don't have. I mean, I've pretty much said all I really wanted to say about it. I am super excited for the idea of more coming. I don't need Chris Hemsworth. I was excited about that idea, but I would rather the franchise continue than get hung up on something like that. And if you need to give Chris Pine a little more money and not have Chris Hemsworth, that is absolutely okay with me. But then again, I would have been perfectly okay if Chris Hemsworth didn't come back and we promoted Sulu to be the captain.
Yeah.
I like John Cho enough. I don't think he has the star power to carry it at this point. And I think that's probably what Paramount is thinking. Like, no, we need Chris Pine.
That's possible.
I really hope they are like Noah Hawley so far knows how to work on a shoestring budget. Legion looks fantastic.
Yeah, it does.
It is shot on an FX budget, man.
Yeah, and it's shot with the scope, and the care is given to the plot lines and the acting that as if it were being made for a big budget movie. And that's what you got to do to get to this level where you're offered Star Trek after only a couple of series that you wrote and directed, and they've just been, both of them have been prestigious and well done. And now we're going to get him on Star Trek. I'm totally 100% in. 100% in.
And something that Noah Hawley represents to me is a hopeful reemergence of intelligence in Star Trek. Not to say that the Abrams movies didn't have that to some degree, but it was a lot more, pew pew bang bang Star Wars. And I think that's one of the important ways Star Trek always differentiated itself from Star Wars, is that it was always a more thoughtful property, a lot more psychological, and I think that they can get back to that. I really think that with Hawley at the helm, they could potentially get back to that. And I loved Star Trek Beyond, and I hated it didn't do better at the box office. I hated that they didn't market it. And hopefully they're looking at Warner Brothers. What Warner Brothers just did was make $1 billion on a $55 million property with Joker.
Yep.
That movie is now the most profitable comic book movie of all time.
Yeah, percentage wise. Right.
And and I'm hoping Paramount can look at this and say, we need to look at this, and we need to look at Star Trek as what it was before. It is an independent movie franchise. And if we play our cards right, we can produce it on a low budget without it looking terrible and yield higher results. Like Star Trek doesn't have that fan base at this point. I know they were trying to make it that way with this series of movies, but I feel like it also sort of settled back into a rhythm that the franchise as a whole is more comfortable with. And some of that is marketing. Some of that is just not having the licenses. They don't have the toys to get kids excited anymore. And I hope all of that changes. I hope if they do this, they do it right.
Yeah, I do the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, and I feel like the whole split between CBS and Paramount just reminds me of the splits we've been having for so long with Sony and Marvel and Fox, and this just reminds me of the same stuff. You know what I mean? Like, come together, make the good Star Trek we want. Just come together. Come on, people.
And I'm not saying I don't want action. I'm fine with that.
No, of course.
It's like some of the action in the Abrams stuff has just been really cool. I just wish there was a little more meat to it.
Yeah, no, I love action if it has heart behind it, if it's character-driven action. But sometimes these, some shows and movies are just action. They just have to insert an action sequence just to reach the quota of action sequences, and I don't care about that. You got to make me care about the action sequence, or I'm bored. Yeah.
Like Kirk stomping the Klingon, or Christopher Lloyd's face on Star Trek 3, stomping his face on the edge of that cliff. I have had enough of you. That's one of my favorite sequences in any movie.
All right. Well, that's about all we got to say about that. Just wanted to drop a short one to mention that news. We'll keep bringing you the news. We'll keep bringing you the Picard primer. And of course, when this movie gets made, if this movie gets made, we will be covering that too. We're going to float between worlds, man. All these, the multiverse of Star Trek, man.
I'm down with it, man. I'm excited about it.
Me too. All right, guys. Peace.
Live long and prosper, y'all.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at Star Trek Ucast on Twitter, or search for the Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. And if you want to hear more from David C. Robertson, search for the DC On Screen podcast in your podcast app now, or go to maladjusted.tv for his comedy sketches. If you want to hear more from me, Matthew Carroll, search for the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or the Orville Universe podcast in your podcast app, or check out my music. Just search for Matthew Carroll wherever you listen to music.